Hi, this is Garibay, and today we're going to be talking about Dungeons & Dragons and parsing the new groupings of Dungeons & Dragons participants. Alright, so let's talk about it. Alright, so right now, what's happening in Dungeons & Dragons? The number one thing that's happening in Dungeons & Dragons is Critical Role. Okay, we're in a very nice, this is a moment of peace in Dungeons & Dragons. There's no new, 6th edition has not been announced. 5th edition is just coasting on rails, right? It's doing really well. We're about to get a new Stranger Things. I think there's going to be some Dungeons & Dragons hype in Stranger Things. We just had the Dungeons & Dragons Stranger Things box set, which was beautiful. Just one of the best products. The Dungeons & Dragons Stranger Things box set. Yeah, starter set, right? It was really wonderful. I absolutely loved it. So we have a lot going on. There's really just a ton going on right now. Right, but the biggest thing in D&D right now is Matthew Mercer and Critical Role. So they just completed, this is incredible, a $10 million Kickstarter for an animated show based on Critical Role. It's pretty incredible, right? And that's them playing Dungeons & Dragons, and it's going to get a little interesting because it's going to be, hey, what is this world that, they're telling stories, they're connected to Dungeons & Dragons, but who owns them? There's just so much going on with Matthew Mercer, and I'm going to say something. So one, I'm going to give my biases up front, just so you know where I'm coming from. I am not super happy with the growth of online play. I really am not. I'm not. Basically, I think there's a lot of problems that come with Matthew Mercer, with Critical Role, and with online play. And Critical Role is pushing online play more than anything else in Dungeons & Dragons right now. Now, I think there's a host of problems that come with this, but I want to be super clear. I'm a logical and reasonable man, right? And when I look at online play, there's no way to responsibly view online play and not fully acknowledge that online play has, at the macro level, brought more benefits to Dungeons & Dragons, to the Dungeons & Dragons community, to the tabletop role-playing game hobby than it has produced. More benefits, more advantages than disadvantages, more benefits than problems. That's a fact. I acknowledge that, right? Now I have my foibles, and I frequently, and I say them. I haven't been hiding, where I think all of that falls, right? But the reality is, Matthew Mercer, in my opinion, is currently the modern Gary Gygax. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, he's the heart of the game. He's the person who is pushing the game forward with all his heart and soul, and with a genuine interest and a genuine love for the community and a genuine love for the game, right? So with all that, so now that doesn't mean that he's not harming the game in specific ways, which I have discussed. That's not the purpose of this video. But the reality is, I really think that Matthew Mercer has become the modern Gary Gygax. Gary Gygax, he served as a designer, he served as a promoter, he served as a champion for the game, he served as a diplomat to the Dungeons & Dragons community throughout every single day of his life from 1974 to 2008. He's a great man, and I really miss him, and I think there will always, for Dungeons & Dragons, there always will be a modern Gary Gygax, someone who is here now doing the work of Gary Gygax in the current. And I think that's Matthew Mercer. If you have someone, I think Matthew Mercer right now is doing more, one person, right, is doing more to spread Dungeons & Dragons as a game than all of Wizards of the Coast and every single third-party publisher combined, right? So, all right, so you got Matthew Mercer. So we're acknowledging him as the modern Gary Gygax. And by the way, it hurts me a little to say that because I'm not a super fan of him. But the reality is, as a thinking and logical human being and reasoning human being, when you see the proof of you can't ignore it, right? So he has clearly done more. He's created more benefits to the game than he's created problems. All right. Now, because he has come forward and online Dungeons & Dragons has spiked through the roof, and we now have D&D Beyond, and we now have celebrity games, we need to talk about the different types of participants in Dungeons & Dragons, and we need categories for them. And I'm going to say a word that people don't like, we need labels, right? So why do I think we need labels, right? So I hear you. Hey, let's not put labels on anything, man. We don't really need that. You're just limiting people. Well, here's the reason why I think we need labels. Let's kick it out, all right? Okay. So when I was in college, I went to Millersville University, and it is the year 1988, all right? And what happens is I go to college. I'm about an hour and a half away from home. I live in the dorms, and everybody's there and everybody's doing their thing and getting things set, right? And so basically on my floor it was just like, when you weren't going to class, there's people everywhere, right? And we would get together in rooms, we would talk, we'd have these big talking discussions, people would have Game of Hearts, people would just hang out together. It was really fun. It was really wonderful on the dorm hall, right? Well, from like 9 to 1 a.m. On any given college night, I'd be hanging out with a group of people, and there was this one dude, right? We're gonna call him Shirtless Dude, because that's what he was. He's built like a brick house, right? He looked like he was on the football team. He hung out with everybody who was on the football team, but he wasn't on the football team, right? And he was kind of short, but he was jacked, right? And we'd all be hanging out. We'd just be talking about different stuff, a million different things, playing some hearts, just having a good time, right? And every night, this guy would have, actually, not every single night would he have a different girl, but he would be with girls all the time, and he never wore a shirt, right? Right. And so a girl would be with him, and we'd say, and shirtless guy would introduce the girl to the group, say, "Hey, this is XYZ," and then and then everybody would say hi. That girl would be included in the discussion. But the next night there'd be another girl, right? And then the night after that it would be the same girl, and the night after that it'd be the same girl. But then there was a third girl, right? And that girl, she would be 1 to 3 or 4 nights. And then there'd be a girl after that, right? And with every single girl, right, one of the other girls often would say, "Well, your girlfriend," right? At some point they would say, "Well, your girlfriend," when they were making a point, right? And the guy was always quick to say, "We're not boyfriend and girlfriend," right? I never once heard a single one of the girls say this, right? It was always him saying this. He's like, "We don't put labels on things," right? And then he would look at the girl, and sometimes the girl would nod, and then sometimes the girl would be like, just kind of cock her head in a weird, but I realized he was saying, let's not put labels on this, not because he was really concerned about the people he was with, but because it aided him to not put labels on it, right? Now, here's my experience, right? So I had a girl, so there was a girl, and, I met her, and so same time frame, right? And basically, I met this girl, we started talking a lot, right? And she came to some of these functions, and then at one point, one of the guys said to me, "Oh, is your girlfriend coming?" And I said, "Oh, she's not my girlfriend." And he goes, "Oh, sorry, I thought you guys were." And I was like, "Yeah, you know what? I should do something about that." So I went to the girl that I've been hanging out with from a couple dorms over, and I was like, "Hey, would you like to go out with me?" And she's like, "Do you mean on a date?" And I was like, "Well, I thought we've been on a few dates, but maybe I should have made that clear. Would you like to be my girlfriend?" And I asked her that, right? And so then, it was clear, and then I would introduce her as my girlfriend. And as soon as we did that, we didn't date anybody else, right? And there wasn't a different girl. I couldn't bring a different girl to the conversations, right? Because I had put a label on it, right? But the girl seemed really happy with that, right? And it worked out. It worked out for about a year and a half. And then I did meet another girl, right? I met a girl back home. I just fell in love with her. She's the girl that became my wife, right? And this happened over the summer, right? And so I started talking to this new girl over the summer, and when I had to go, and right quick, right after I known my wife for a week and a half, right? We had not gone on a date. I drove all the way from Philadelphia up to Millersville University just to break up with my girlfriend and said, "I found this other person. I really fall in love. I'm really sorry." Like this, but I owned all of that, right? And it limited what I could do and what choices I could make, right? But I had a good relationship with that girl in the beginning. It was painful when we broke up. And then I had a new girlfriend, and then I had a fiance, and then I had a wife, right? And my point is, when you own labels, right, you can build something great. And me and my wife, I feel we've built something great, right? We have a home. We have 2 cars. Far more important than that, we have a marriage that's lasted 28 years, and we have 4 children, right? And my point is, when you put a label on something, you know what is expected from that role, right? And you can build great things on it. Now, certainly there is differences between labels for a game and what we do in romantic relationships, but I think there's a lot of overlap in that we are building relationships of trust, right? And we're saying this is what's to be expected of this role, and this is what's to be expected of this role. And we already have this in Dungeons & Dragons. We have the Dungeon Master, we have the player, and these are distinct roles, and there are distinct expectations, right? But what I'm saying today, the purpose of this video, right, is that those two roles are no longer sufficient because of Matthew Mercer, okay? Matthew Mercer has solidified 2 new trends in Dungeons & Dragons that demand new labels. So let's get into them. All right. Dungeon Master and Player. What is this role? What will it be going forward? Okay? Dungeon Master, Player. These 2 roles going forward, and this is my suggestion to the community, and I intend to begin using these terms, and I'm suggesting that the Dungeons & Dragons community uses this term. I know it will be years, and if the Dungeons & Dragons community uses this role, perhaps Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro Gaming will actually take these roles on, okay? All right, and make them official within the game. All right, a Dungeon Master and a Player are people who play shoulder-to-shoulder physical table Dungeons & Dragons with their friends at a kitchen table or at a table in a home with no camera, period, all right? Now, there's a lot of caveats there, and you're going to see why in a minute, all right? Now, by the way, that is the absolute purest, best reason to play the game. It is the most wonderful form of Dungeons & Dragons. It is the pinnacle of Dungeons & Dragons play, right? It is people getting together for the share of the game, the share of their friendship, the share of humanity, and no other reason, right? And when that game's done, people can hug each other, they can share soup, like they can, they can pet the Dungeon Master's cat if the game is at the Dungeon Master. There's nothing better than that. And pretending that there is wrong, okay? It is the pinnacle of the game, and the roles of Dungeon Master and Player will be preserved for that pinnacle of the game. All right, so what's next? Oh, by the way, there's one more role that is connected to the Dungeon Master and the Player role, and that is Monitor, right? What is a Monitor? A Monitor is a person who goes to a shoulder-to-shoulder physical kitchen table Dungeons & Dragons game in someone's home with no online or recorded, with no online audience, and with no cameras, okay? Now, the Monitor is someone who is witnessing that game and watching that game, right? And that can happen. This has already happened in my games. It's incredibly rare. It's a really interesting thing, and it is new, okay? It is people watching Dungeons & Dragons games, physical, shoulder-to-shoulder, physical table games of Dungeons & Dragons, and watching them for the enjoyment of watching them. It's incredibly rare. Most Dungeon Masters never have monitors. I've had a few, right? I'm betting that some of my viewers have had a few as well. Excuse me. All right, so let's go forward. All right, next is Digis and Digimasters. Digis and Digimasters are your standard YouTube streamers, your standard Twitch streamers. People who have campaigns, online campaigns, and play online games. I would say a perfect example of this is Matthew Click and a few other from Absolute Tabletop. Like he has a little bit of juice. He's got some followers, right? But like nobody's really going to recognize him outside of the Dungeons & Dragons community, right? Whereas that's not the case with Matthew Mercer and Critical Role. Those people are connected to multiple other intellectual properties and could be recognized by video game fans. It's unlikely that anyone outside the Dungeons & Dragons community would ever recognize Matt Click, even though he's a celebrity to me, but he's not at the macro level of celebrity, okay? So Digis are digital players, people who use D&D Beyond, people who play games with actual physical books, but they're not sitting in the same place as their Dungeon Master, and they are streaming these games live, or they are putting them on Twitch, right? So that they have an initial audience, or they're recorded, right? It's online games where there is a camera, okay? Those are digis. The digital players are digis. The Digimasters are playing the traditional role of Dungeon Master, but we call them Digimasters so that we can parse them out and understand what they're doing. What they're doing is incredible. What Digis and Digimasters are doing is incredibly important to the game, right? It spreads Dungeons & Dragons. It allows people who are not able to be together to play together, right? And we need to acknowledge the value of their games, but we also need to make sure that all those people understand that there's a baccalaureate, there's a master's, and there's a doctorate, and they are really sitting at the baccalaureate or the master's level. That's the issue, right? There's a place to graduate to, which is the shoulder-to-shoulder physical table games. That is the pinnacle. That is the premium experience, and no Dungeons & Dragons player, no Dungeons & Dragons participant should ever end their career without having that experience, because it's just too valuable, right? Also, it's important that we parse these labels out because we want to drive people toward the premium game, toward the physical physical table shoulder-to-shoulder games, right? And the reason why is that's the greatest value of the game, is binding friendships with the game, right? And there's just something special and human and unique and incredibly valuable about it. And it is the pinnacle of the game, all right? So you have Digis, that's the digital player. You have Digimasters, that is a digital Dungeon Master, right? What are the people who watch those games? They're called Watchers, okay? And Watchers, that's the new term. Those are people who watch streamed games, right? All of that. And so you have Watchers. So now we have Watchers, Digis, Digimasters. We have Monitors, Players, and Dungeon Masters. There's one more set, right? And that is celebrity games, right? What do you do with celebrity games? Right now there are 2 huge celebrity games, and there is a growing number of celebrity games, right? There are a ton of celebrities now playing Dungeons & Dragons. Right now, it's Deborah Ann Woll. Right now, it's Matthew Lillard. All of Matthew Mercer's crew are genuine celebrities at this point. They're all voice actors. They're all they're known from properties well outside of Dungeons & Dragons, and it's a significant number of people, right? And you got Joe Manganiello. You got there's a few others in there. The Big Show from wrestling. Satine Phoenix is a celebrity as well. Patrick Rothfuss, right? There are a ton of celebrity Dungeons & Dragons players right now. It's quite a few. It is pretty incredible, all right? So, with all that, you have that situation when that's all moving forward. So what do you call them, right? Well, we're going to call them Dramies and Dramie Masters, right? Now, where does Dramie come from? It comes from drama. Almost all of these celebrities come from dramatic portrayals as actors of other roles, right? Whether it be through voice acting, whether it be through actual acting, we call them Dramies, all right? So players are Dramies, and for celebrity games, the celebrity Dungeon Master would be a Dramie Master, right? Now, what's the counterpart for Watcher and Monitor? There isn't one. Watchers and Monitors can watch Dramie games, right? They can watch Dramies, they can watch Dramie Masters, and you can have Monitors, people who are there physically watching the game, or people who, that would be a Monitor, and then you can have people who are watching the game online. So for a Dramie game, you can have both Dramies and Monitors simultaneously, okay? So the reason why I took the time to parse this all out is I really think we need these labels, right? So that we know what people are doing when they're doing it. Another reason why I think there's incredible value in dropping these labels down is more and more these celebrity games really don't have anything to do with rules, right? The rules in celebrity games are the most lax, right? And really a lot of that is just improv, right? And one of the things is if we stop pretending that that the Dramie games are pure Dungeons & Dragons games, we can say, oh, that's a Dramie game. There's a different construct. There's a different flow for those games that you would find in another traditional Dungeons & Dragons game, or that you would even find in a Digi game, right? So you have Dungeons & Dragons games. That's physical shoulder-to-shoulder games. You have DigiGames. That's Dungeons & Dragons being played digitally on a low bandwidth, comparatively, feed, right? And then you have Dreamy Games, which are legit celebrities playing Dungeons & Dragons. And those games really look very different, right? So if we can understand there are Dreamy Games, DigiGames, and D&D games, right? We can start to give some of these people a little less flack, right? Because what they're doing is fundamentally different. And also, we realize we can say that Dreamy Games and DigiGames can graduate to Dungeons & Dragons games, right? So that's the graduation, right? So we can value what they're doing as they build our hobby, but we can also point all of these players in Dreamy Games and in DigiGames to the real game, right? Like to the real deal premium experience, right? Where friends are built and memories are built. That's my take, and that's my opinion on what we as a community should start to label different types of Dungeons & Dragons participants, right? I'd love to hear your opinion. Do you think I missed anything? Do you think I got the terms wrong? Do you think there's any better terms here? Let me know in the comments below. I would love that. Thank you very much. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.